All right, we've started.
Okay. We started.
This is Evelyn's stage management techniques where she just messes with us.
Okay, I'm appreciative of that. As not being a pro to this, I'll take all the help I can get.
She called us talent earlier.
Me. Talent.
Yeah,
oh my God, I love that so much.
Yeah.
I am on stage a lot these days, which is fun.
Well, that's
and
pretty
a little
cool.
Intimidating. But,
yeah. Well, should I be like the introducer, the person that introduces you on stage? We're pleased to announce the arrival of Barbara Flitsch, who I lovingly call Barb now for 12 or 13 years. We've known each other. She is the founder and principal of AMP, a very cool company. And you're our first guest ever.
I know. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Excited
Thank
too.
you for having me. I'm honored, honestly.
It's kind of wild because you were also maybe the first customer that wasn't Willis Towers Watson for Airbo Labs, like back when it was called H Engage.
Yes. I have my H Engage t-shirt. I was
Do you
cleaning out my
really?
drawers the other night. I saved it. It was one of the ones I saved.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I should have taken a picture of it.
I wish you did. I don't know where mine is, but a shocking number of people still have it. Like, I need to track these down. That swag lives strong.
It was good. It was good swag.
I think
I can wear it now.
I was very, very involved in designing it. And I think our revenue would be like 15 to 20% higher today just through compound returns if I didn't spend so much time on that freaking t-shirt. What were we just talking about?
Well, we were talking about all kinds of things it's been 12 or 13 years.
Yeah, it's been like 13 years.
For both of us,
For both
really,
of us.
being in business, independent of the bigs.
Yeah. Because, so I left at the time it was Towers Watson. I left Towers Watson as well as Towers Watson in 2011 in like January. You left
in 2010.
In 2010.
Yep.
You beat me out by a year.
October of 2010.
October.
Yep. And it was the next year that we were doing our big event at Nemacolin. And that's when you're like, yeah, I'm doing this thing. I was like, yeah, let's do it.
I was like really racking my brain of how we met. Like actually, like I remember being there because it was such a wild event. It was by Highmark, right? Or Highmark was a participant.
Yeah, it was Highmark.
It was a Highmark event for like.
It was like our client advisory event. And
you guys hired me to come in or us to come in. I think I came with actually Kate was there too.
Yep.
Kate was there. And Kate's boss, Kim was there. K1, K2. Yeah. And it was Catherine Yates introduced us, right?
Correct. Yes, Catherine. So I had been talking to Catherine. I had gotten this role. I'd been recruited to the role of National Consulting Relations Leader for Highmark. They just started their BPO business. And so my job was to work with the other Blues and convince them to send RFPs to Highmark's national accounts capability. Okay. I feel like in addition to the clients that were there, we were also bringing prospects from these other Blues, which is why it was a big deal. It was at Nemacolin, and it's the only place I've ever been where you get your own butler, which was amazing.
They must have skipped my room.
And it was this beautiful campus.
Yeah.
But you had done it at Conference Board.
Yeah.
And that's where we met, was at Conference Board.
That's right.
Because Catherine was there and she's like, oh, you have to see what Vlad's doing. Why don't you come and experience it? Which was also funny enough how the first time I ever really met Greg Morrow, who runs those conferences for the Conference Board.
Oh, wow.
I presented for him a bunch of times. We did his first ever resilience conference where we brought, for the first time in the 120 years of Conference Board's existence, we brought therapy animals in.
Oh my God. How cool is that?
Oh, it was so fun. We did it in New York, though. They were losing their minds because we had the shelter bring the animals in.
That seems like a San Diego activity.
I know.
That seems like a San Diego activity. But I actually kind of love it.
But that's why you were there, was because I continue to this day to have a passion for surprising people. And that was what struck me about your value prop, was it was really about surprising people and then having data on the back end to prove that it worked. Yeah. So those things together were just super intriguing. And I totally steamrolled everybody at Highmark. I was like, we're doing this.
You probably had to bring us in. I think I was like 28, 27 at the time. It was like a brand new company. It was kind of a risk.
It was. But, I loved my Highmark peeps. I really did. And now, it's fun to watch what happens to people, right? Here you are 12 years later, the big kahuna of Benefits Boost.
Is that what this podcast is called? Benefits Boost?
The Benefits Boost.
I chose it. I forgot. Yeah.
I pay attention to these things.
You really retain information, and that makes you scary and
I'm the
lovable.
Cliff Clavin of benefits.
Yeah. Wait, were you in New York or San Diego when we met?
New York.
New York. Do you know what happened in New York with the launch?
Mm-mm.
This is a story that most people don't know. I don't think I've ever told this like publicly.
Oh.
I don't know if you remember this part. You were in the room when Catherine and Adam got on stage. Adam Wooten and Catherine got on stage. They were like, we're launching this thing today called H Engage. The way that we were there was so absurd. I was supposed to be speaker at the conference board because I was heading up a consulting practice within WTW, or I don't even know what I should call it these days. And I feel like a phony saying WTW because I never technically worked there. But Towers Watson. And like I decided to leave the company sometime in like November, December, and it was like too close to for comfort for the conference board. And I remember telling Catherine that I was leaving, who was like relatively new to me. Like we didn't really know. In fact, it was kind of a nemesis thing because we were coming in from different parts of the organization. I was from the Towers Perrin side. They were you guys were like
the established yes.
like evil empire, like. You know, we were all like, thought we were like the good guys, and it was so stupid.
We'll come back to that though, because there's a funny story about that.
Oh,
but
really?
do tell.
So, anyways,
so you're right. I totally get that.
Yeah, and I'm on the integration team too. So I'm like, we're integrating those practices. So I call up Catherine and a few other people, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I have to leave to start this company. Catherine's response redefined my whole thought process on people. She fundamentally altered my perspective because her response was like, that's awesome. We're going to support you every way we can. Instead of like kind of telling me to get the hell out, they were like, why don't you come to the conference board still? We'll pay you to be there because you're a startup. We'll pay you a speaker fee and we'll launch the prototype. Our customers will, clients will love it. It'll be like an innovation showcase. I was like, okay, that's great. We had nothing built. And my co-founder had quit that morning. Yeah. So we end up...
I did not know that.
It was wild. I ended up finding someone who had been recently laid off and playing beer pong. And by the way, in the basement of this company called Wistia is now one of the largest companies in video. Like Chris Savage is their CEO.
Oh yeah, Wistia? I was watching a Wistia video this morning.
Yeah, when there were 5 people, I was in their basement playing beer pong with a bunch of like who's who of like the Boston startup scene, and one of them was like, what are you doing? And I told him, and he was like, oh, I could build that in like 3 days. And then he did. Flash forward, we're at the conference board, we're launching. I have a skeleton crew. There's hundreds and hundreds of people in the room, right? And it's the Fortune 500 and like the big kahunas at the consulting firm. Catherine, who's the head, for those that don't know, she was the head of the communications practice, like post-integration. Adam Wooten was the head of technology. Hi, Adam. They get on stage and they're like, and now we're so pleased to launch H Engage. And it was like a text message based product, right? You can text in keywords. We would answer being like, you'd be like, I ate fruit, and be like, plus 5 points. You're so awesome for eating fruit. It was like basic like game mechanics and mobile and whatever. So they say this stuff. I see everyone take out their phones to text in their first initial and last name to sign up. Were you in the room? I'm in the front row looking at our chat software with my team who's remote. And I'm like, hey, how many people signed up? And they're like, we don't know. Twilio went down. Twilio is our SMS provider. They were kind of early days. We actually, in the moment that we launched, Twilio collapsed.
Oh my God.
Unrelated to us. It was just really bad luck.
I did not know that.
As part of the presentation, Adam and Catherine, actually Adam in this case, was like, all right. And he's Australian. This is my best Australian accent. I'm not impressed. I'm going to try to be Adam. He's like, all right, mates. And now that it's been, a few minutes signups, Vlad, how many people do we have signed up? And like literally a freaking spotlight goes on me. I'm in the front row. I'm looking at this chat software being like, I literally don't even know if these signups went through. But I looked around and I was like, I had a little whiteboard. A little iPad I had to write on to show everyone in the room that I was holding. And I was like, I think I wrote like 76 people. Totally eyeballed it. Adam's like, 76. All right, we can do better. And like encourage more people to sign up. Anyways, I'm like, cool. This company has officially collapsed before it even got started. I'm like sweating bullets. The presentation's finally over. I leave. I think Catherine or someone came up to me and was like, hey, like, doesn't seem like people are getting responses yet. I was like, yeah, there's a little hitch with the provider. And I told her, I was like, there's a little hitch with the provider where they kind of went down just as we were doing that. We're trying to figure out if we can like unbacklog them. She was completely unfazed. She was like, okay, we'll see if you can fix that. We'll just like keep trying to figure it out. We got really lucky. The provider went up. Nothing was lost. Everything backlogged hit. Everyone got signed up. We had like hundreds of people by the end of it that were part of it running around, right?
Yes.
Like texting with posters.
Yes. And that's what made me convinced to do it for Highmark. Because watching people, usually it's the dead-eyed crowd that looks like you're in Walking Dead, you know? Just like slogging through the gauntlet and, you know, like the old home week, you'll see people that are with friends. They're kind of animated and engaged, but everyone else is just sort of moving around kind of thing. And people were excited about it. And you know, you could see them like, did you do this? Did you do it? Did you do it? And I was actually, I think, one of those people that was running around going, did you do it? Have you done it yet? You know, we actually turned it into also sort of a physical scavenger hunt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
With the one that we did.
Yeah, that's what we did. That's right. We designed a whole like text message based scavenger hunt.
That's right.
People were running around this resort. Adult. A lot of adult men running around.
Yes. But they were into it.
Super into it.
So you had something.
Yeah.
And here you are.
Here you are. I mean, very different. You know, what's ironic is that in 2011, really 2010, I became convinced that like the best interface for something like that was a text-based interface. And ultimately, the reason why we moved away from it was because it was too difficult to process natural language. We were building engines from scratch to try to like process what people were texting in and giving good responses. That turned out to be so hard that we like had to pivot the business into like the technology into something else because it wouldn't be reliable enough. It is so freaking ironic that Airbo is back to doing essentially text-based. It's like really what we started. Like AI has enabled us to fulfill the original vision from 13 years ago.
Wow.
It blows my mind.
I sat there and I was sad that I didn't get to see it at the last conference, the roundtable that we were at, because I wasn't in the room for that. I got split off into the other cohort.
EHIR.
Yeah. EHIR. So I didn't get to do that. I heard it was great. And I'm excited to see more. This is pain. This is a real pain point, right? You know this. You do this. I mean, it's a real pain point for companies. So we spend a lot of our time, as you know, scrubbing up. You know, I always try to talk about that. You know, we come in with the mop and the bucket and slap on our rubber gloves and clean up the crime scene. Get out.
Wait, actually, hold on. I actually think this is important. So, like,
we probably should talk about that.
We should talk about what like what you do. And you've been a mentor for me for like years and years and years. Obviously, you've seen the industry in ways that a lot of people haven't seen the industry. You've also like been in the mainstream and I've been on the outside doing really crazy stuff that's really cool, and I've always been really open-minded. So like, just take us through your career journey. How did you end up in benefits to begin with?
Because I was a failure as a headhunter.
That's a very honest answer.
It's the truth. It's the truth. So my degree's in hotel and restaurant management, right? That was my first gig. And so service, right? Think of service as the core. I married an engineer. It was not cool that I worked every weekend and every holiday and, you know, all of that stuff. And he was Mr. 9 to 5. And so I was like, oh, well, I'll go find something else to do. And the universe is always like right there, just pushing stuff at me. And so I met through happenstance somebody that this is the 80s. So we headhunted admin because admin were really hard to find and they got really expensive. And so that was my job, was that I...
Sorry, what's an admin? What do you mean? Like administrative assistant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, admin, but like receptionists and administrative assistants you would have one, right?
Yeah.
Your senior salespeople would have one. We shared them.
I have an admin.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Good for you, man. You're ahead of me.
What's up, Jess? Thank you for everything you do.
Jess, I'm sorry.
I think everyone's sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, I got connected to these people who were owners of a business in Connecticut, but they also sat on the board of Aetna. You won't remember, but before you were born in 1989.
Hey, wait, I was born.
Were you born in 89?
I was born in 84.
Okay. All right. Well, so you were 5 years old.
In Ukraine. I was still in Ukraine, hanging out,
God,
playing with little communist toys.
A whole other conversation about what is that? I don't know what that is.
It is a thing.
Is it a thing?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
See, I'm uneducated.
I mean, they're just poorer.
Okay.
Yeah, less distinct tanks with,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So not G.I. Joe.
no, Communist Joe. Communist Yosef.
Vlad. Right?
Communist
Communist
Vlad.
Vlad.
Yeah, there's no good Vlads. That's a running theme. You ever notice that in popular culture? No good Vlads. Anyways,
That's true. That's interesting. Anyways, long story.
Yeah.
I fell into this and I became the assistant to the woman that was the head of benefits for this company. And during that time, there was a law that was passed.
Wait, I'm sorry. You were the assistant.
So I came in, somebody was going on maternity leave.
Yeah.
The head of the headhunting, they had come to the headhunting firm where I worked to find somebody to fill in for maternity leave for this person that worked for the head of benefits.
Okay.
The same week, that was the same week that Howard, my boss, who was a lovely man, took me out to lunch and said, honey, this just isn't for you. I think we need to find you something else. What else would you like to do? And I had no idea. Right? I had no idea. But my dad had worked in personnel. And I was like, I heard about that a lot in my life. And he's like, I might have something for you. That is how I got into benefits.
Oh my God.
Was I got dropped in to cover a 3-month stint for someone at the same time that Congress passed something called Section 89. And Section 89 said, oh, benefits are taxable. No tax deduction for all those health plans and all that stuff. And so we had to figure out what all of that was worth. And they were partnered with Aetna because their chair people sat on the board of Aetna. So they volunteered to be the guinea pig for all of the, 401k assessment stuff, all of like that kind of valuation work.
Oh my God,
on the benefits side.
You were in so deep.
I was so deep.
That's the deep
and
end.
I did not know what I was doing. But my boss had something called a cron, and she had a computer with a dust cover on it. And we printed out every email she got, and it went into the cron. And she had these binders of all of her emails. And that's how she managed her life, being the head of benefits. It was very strange. Anyway, I got hooked up with the guys from Aetna and went through this whole process. And then Congress came back and were like, we were just kidding. So the whole thing went away. And they're like, well, and then this woman came back from maternity leave. So the guys from Aetna said, what are you going to do now? And I'm probably should be ashamed to admit that I did look at them and say, I suppose I could go stand on a street corner.
That's, by the way, a very Barb response.
It is
a very like...
I was like, I don't know. I'll probably just go back to what I was doing. They were like, no. And Henry Rhodes sat me down and said, I can teach you everything you need to know about insurance, but I can't teach you to do what you do with people.
Oh.
And so you should be a service rep. So that's how I became a service rep at Aetna. And I did that for 7.5 years and was one of the first national account service reps. I was one of the first service reps they ever moved into a different market. I got to work with Sam Zell when he was starting his REIT business and Eagle Industries, figured out how to do self-contained underwriting and margin within a holding company of businesses to self-fund their health plans and not blow the bank up. My husband's a Minnesotan, so we were going back to Minnesota. So they shipped me back to Minnesota and I worked there until I had our daughter. And then one of our clients said, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to take care of this kid. And they're like, well, you want to be a spreadsheet jockey for us at night? And I was like, sure. So what event was started, it was Alexander and Alexander, became Aon.
Oh.
I did that for about 1.5 years. And do you remember Kathy Tripp? Hey, Kathy. She's retired now. But Kathy was at the time was at Alexander and Alexander. She was running all of their Taft-Hartley business and TPA stuff. And so I worked with her. She hired me there. She's the one that eventually brought me over to Watson Wyatt and got me in over there. So yeah. So anyway, so I did that. And then one of our clients hired me to run their plan, which was a joint powers public entity for 26 Minnesota counties, self-funding their benefits.
Wow.
And it was deep in the hole. Did not know that when I took the job. So I ran around the state of Minnesota for a year, reconstituting that program and ran a benefit plan for 1.5 years. And then got recruited to Definity Health and was the first service rep there. And then eventually led and killed a bunch of stuff that we tried and didn't work. And I was always the person that they would call when it was time to shoot the thing because I was better at that, I guess, and more willing to do it. And then I was recruited from there over to Watson Wyatt as the head of sales ops for the National Data Cooperative. So Data Geek at heart, which is why I have so much affinity for what you do.
Until I told you that story.
I know, I love it. And it terrifies me all at the same time. Even now, I'm like, oh my God, that would not have been fun.
Wasn't.
Yeah. So then, I did that. I did consulting for 5 years, ended up working with Biggs, not my plan, but that's how it ended up. And then got recruited to be the head of national consulting firm relations at Highmark. And then got recruited to be the head of national consulting firm relations at Aetna. And then got fired for the first time in my career. at 50, which was not fun.
That's gnarly.
It was harsh. It was super harsh. My boss,
you loved that job.
I loved. No, actually, I didn't. I hated it.
You hated it.
If I could have done the job that I was hired to do, I would have loved it.
Yeah.
But, I am not good with administrivia nor politics. And I was told my first day that I would spend 40% of my time doing my actual job. And the rest of the time would be spent managing my career and managing up and out. Yeah. Right. I was like, that doesn't seem like right.
I actually remember talking to you while you were taking that job after Highmark.
Do you?
I do. I remember because we had 2 conversations, and one conversation was right when you were starting and you were really excited. And then there was another conversation where you were just like, this is not what I thought it was. I remember that. It just flashed back as I was like, there was a pre and post.
Yeah, it was rough. It was really rough. But I will say it's been 12 years and that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
I've seen you since. It's wild. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what'd you do next?
So I did what I always do. I pick up the phone and started calling people. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what am I doing? Do I need a job? I need to do something. I'm like, I'm very motivated by money, And so that was my driving, like, and I had a little kid, I mean, we had just bought this house. Like, it was crazy. And so people, when I was at Watson Wyatt, one of the things that I spent a lot of time doing was bringing innovation to my customers. So I was more than willing to go out and, American telemedicine, who knew what they were doing? They were doing in-home monitoring. Now we have codes for that in CMS, right? Yeah, let's try it. And I had a client that said yes, right? So all these little companies came and they were like, will you help us? And I said yes, because I wasn't doing anything else. So...
And this is like 2014.
2010.
2010.
Well, no.
2012
was when late 12 was when I left Aetna.
Okay.
Because 10 was Highmark. I did Highmark for 15 months and then Aetna was 8.5 months.
Okay. So it was like 13-ish. So this is like before what I lovingly call the benefits Big Bang, where we've had this absolute explosion of niche providers and everything. And before the VC money came in, I mean, you were at the heart of this thing. You're already seeing...
I was predicting the rise of the platform in 2010 because it was glaringly apparent that there were going to be too many things for everybody to hook into individually, that we were going to have these aggregators and find a way to make sense of it because it was just coming from every direction. Yes. And I was happy to help some of them individually with things. And I could go where I was interested, right? Like I could go and say, I think that's a really good idea. They actually need that. Because I'd been making sausage for 15 years at that point.
Yeah.
Having done the work, I have found it easier to see things that are like, oh, this is what you're doing. This is a really good idea. This will actually alleviate real pain and free up people to be better and do more of what they can do. So I did 4 years on my own and I like working with people.
Yeah.
It's lonely when you can't talk to anybody about stuff. You need to talk. If you can't tell, I'm a talker. And so I talk through things. And when you can't talk to people about how to get to a solution, it's unproductive. And I was on a project with some gal pals that I had been with at Definity, who are the salt of the earth and like the best people in the world. They said, are you going to stay? We were working on a project that was kind of not great. I was like, no, I can make a living without having a job. I'm going to go find something else to do. And they're like, great, take us with you. So that was the birth of AMP. And what I realized was that there were a few of us that had meaningfully contributed to over $500 million of realized value in the industry, but had not participated meaningfully in any of it. And so I was like, well, if what we do really well is make money for other people, that should be our business model. And what we do is we amplify other people's success.
Oh, hence the name.
Hence the name. And so, they can hire everybody else to do the strategies. You know where strategy goes, right there. Right.
Mm-hmm. Just
sits there. And our stock in trade is that I am a corporate madam. So I take people who have particular skills and most people, and I'm going to go to women for a second, because that's really where I focus, because that's been the bulk of the workforce, right? In the middle, right? We're the mighty middle, responsible for getting it all done. But, you turn a certain age and the industry is kind of like, done with you. And yet I keep meeting these women that are at the apex of their ability to deliver value because we know how it's supposed to work. We've been, we talk about what's unique, right? Where else do you go that you get one individual, yet many individuals who've been inside health plans, employers? I mean, I ran a plan for a couple of years for an energy company as a contractor, right? I sat in the chair having to tell somebody, yes, you should write a check for that. It's terrifying. Right? Inside solutions. The only thing I really haven't ever done is provider and delivered care. But that gives us unique perspective on understanding how will everyone define success?
Yeah.
And where's the common ground that allows you to move forward instead of sitting here and batting at each other trying to get mine?
Yeah. In my job, supposedly I'm in charge of strategy, and I do feel that, but I think strategy is so dumb. The bane of my existence as a consultant, actually, in retrospect, was like sitting in these rooms for hours and hours and hours where we would spend so much money on strategy. And then it came to actually doing the work. All that we produced was a PowerPoint most of the time. That's what came out. A PowerPoint and some meetings, and we all felt very fancy and smart. And then it actually came to like doing the work. I don't really know what happened most of the time.
Probably mostly nothing happened.
So it's cool. So so AMP is all about like bringing in people who have like done the work, who understand what it takes to execute, and putting into places that need that kind of prowess.
Yep. And we have one client who I love dearly, who's just the best. But he says that our superpower is that he can drop us in and not give us a whole lot of direction, and we just go and get it done.
Yeah.
And then we leave. And we're out.
I actually remember you explaining this to me a while back. You were like, yeah, and the most important part is we leave.
I don't need the credit. I just need your cash.
Yeah. Your story is so beautiful because it's very much a story of like, when I meet really remarkable people, a lot of times when you hear about their backgrounds, it's like you could have stopped at so many of those waypoints or taken a different path. In retrospect, it all makes sense. You're like, oh yeah, and somehow I got here because all these things that you just went through added up to this amazing platform that you've built. And now you get invited to like secret meetings and secret rooms where you get to hear things and be a part of stuff, and people keeps building on itself now, right? And I think if like someone started with that intention of being in those rooms, most people don't make it. That's a really trusted, exclusive place to be, to hear and to be listened to. And I don't know, I just think a lot of people should like get a little inspo from this. No matter where you are in your career journey, like if you believe that on the other side is something better, there probably will be something better. And in retrospect, it kind of makes sense. But at the time, it can feel like not so great.
Oh, yeah, often. You're right. So ampers bring other ampers, right? Like we talk about that you kind of have to audition to work with us. People get frustrated. I don't have a website. I'll never have a website.
No?
No. No.
All right.
We get to be choosy. And my job is to match people. Like we focus on when new consultants come in, people will bring me somebody. I get introduced to a lot of people who are really amazing people. And we always talk about Ikigai. So you're familiar with Ikigai?
What?
You're nodding. Yes, Ikigai.
Ikigai?
So I'm gonna mangle this. There's probably a much better way to say it.
Okay.
But my grasp of Ikigai is it's a Japanese construct around kind of your life's purpose in work.
Oh,
right.
Ikigai. Okay.
So it's a Venn diagram. Some have 3, some have 4, depending on what your source is.
Okay.
And it's about what do you love to do? And so for me, I actually love helping other people be successful. That's what gives me so much energy. What I'm good at is hearing people talk about what they need and connecting them to somebody else who actually could do that thing for them. Matching things together is sort of my superpower. So it's what do you love? What are you good at? What does the world need? I think we just all need to get more efficient, And honestly, I think more balanced so that, you and I were talking earlier about finding what is it that gives you energy, that gives you positivity and gives you a great experience on a daily basis, right? That's what I want for all of my people. And what can you get paid for? Because I don't work for free. I don't know about you guys, but I don't work for free. And I don't think anybody should. I get asked to volunteer for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Working at a startup has its pros and cons, but I'm just kidding.
No, believe me. Tell me. Yeah, I know. And sometimes you do it for the right reasons, right? For the most part, the women that I work with, we've not been trained to ask for money. We've not been trained to sell ourselves. We've not been trained to promote ourselves. And for better or worse, I picked a bunch of that up along the way. And I'm just shameless enough to use it, So I turn that power that I have to good for other people who aren't, that's not what they want to do. No one should ask me to lead a project or manage a project. That is not my jam. It's not what I could do it in my younger years, but it's not what I love doing now.
Yeah.
There are people that love doing that stuff. Like it makes them happy and fulfilled. Good on them. I want them on my projects.
Yeah.
Because that's what they love to do. They don't want to go sell themselves. They don't want to do the back end of the business where they have to figure out like, what's the budget and what's everybody do? Because we actually do. I was a consultant for too long, right? Like we do budgets. We have our banks. We do all the things. I sell their time. Everybody does well. And they don't have to apologize if they want to go to their kid's soccer game and a lot of them have kids. So it's a way for them to make a great living, do what they love doing, and be able to do the rest of life too. And our clients love us because we have a mom vibe. I mean, there's a lot of like, we walk in, we're a bunch of middle-aged women and they look at us and they're like, oh, you do stuff. They're like, oh, you're people that do things. And indeed we do.
Yeah.
We just launched a project this week that's a financial well-being month, Money Matters program that is, it's out on LinkedIn. You can find it. It's our amazing partners at News Corp. I'm going to give them a shout out because they're so creative and they are such good partners to let us come in and take their great ideas and kind of bring them to life.
Yeah.
We get to do all of that. We've won awards for our customers for their benefits communications, actually. I'm very proud of it. I have it on my, and I play show and tell a lot when I'm presenting to people. Because I'm like, this is what we do for you. And it's your award. It's not ours. Your company's name on it, not ours.
Yeah.
I want you to be successful. What's it going to take for you to be successful? I've got an electronic file full of what makes me the most proud is the letters that I get from these people that are like, oh my God, I'm like, I love my job so much more. Like it's so much better. It's, it's not because of the work I'm doing. It's because of the work that my people do.
Yeah.
I'm really fortunate.
I can like tell how jazzed you are. I can also tell the delta since I met you. I mean, you've always been jazzed, but like when we saw each other at HIR, which for those that don't know, I don't even know how to describe EHIR.
EHIR is the Employer Healthcare Innovation Roundtable. It's a division of the World 50 organization. They have for 10 years now been focused on, because of what was happening in the marketplace, these guys have day jobs and they needed a way to sift through all of the opportunities that were in the marketplace and find the best of the best kind of thing, but also learn from each other. And so it is a group that gathers on a regular basis, different cohorts. They explore new solutions, they implement new solutions, and then they bring what they've discovered back to the group.
Yeah, that's like far better than I could have done. Great. Kate had applied I don't even think I knew that she had applied to HIR. I think last year, and we got rejected for the record.
It happens about 5 times typically.
5 times. Okay.
So you actually are an anomaly that you made it through in 2 rounds.
Yeah, we got in the second time.
It does not normally happen that fast.
Okay.
That says something about what you're doing.
Look at us.
Because the members choose that. It's a voting process.
Right. Yeah. That's right. I forgot. So it's really cool because I mean, it really is. I'm going to skip the name dropping part because I don't know what I'm about to say, but like it really is the who's who of like big employers. It's feels really good. Kate and I like did a whole like Shark Tank style prep because I've literally had multiple friends on Shark Tank. We were like prepping as if we were going on Shark Tank, using the coaching that my friends give to each other for Shark Tank. And by the way, I was just like a bad sport. I was so bad because I'm like, I hate pitching. I've avoided pitching forever, right? This I think might be the first public pitch like that I've maybe the second time I've ever done something like that. But I like once I got into it, I was like, we're doing it, like so we got really into it. And yeah, it was intense. They like bring you into a room. So we flew to Minnesota for this. Someone very nice meets you in the security at a major employer's headquarters. And you get brought in, like a lot of people get brought in at once. And they put you into like a room that feels like the kind of waiting room you have on set. And you're just in there for like kind of an amount of time that you don't know really how long you're going to be in there. Once in a while, someone comes in and says like, you next. No, very nicely. I'm being facetious. You get brought through a hallway into another door, and the door just swings open. You walk in. There's just this gigantic U table full of crammed Fortune 500 employers and a few VCs. I can't remember feeling so nervous. I've done a lot of public speaking.
It's intense.
It's so intense. I think I literally started off with "Hello, sharks" or something like that.
Well, it's called the Shark Tank, though. That is the Shark Tank session.
That's right. It is actually
it's
called the Shark. Yeah. So they were great. They were really nice. Asked a lot of good questions. Kate and I did our pitch. We won our cohort.
You did.
We did. We got an official award and everything.
I know. I was very proud of you. I was very excited because it's not a small feat.
Oh, I don't think I realized that like how hard it was until afterwards.
There are several hundred companies at every stage of that you went through.
These are things I just like, I'm really happy I didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't think I needed to be more nervous. I would have been more nervous.
Well, you did great. That I heard good things. So
yeah. Well, so first of all, thank you for hanging out. And
it was good to see you.
Looking out for us. I think you texted me, or did I text you?
Like, I did, because somebody passed me thing and I was like, what?
Yeah, we hadn't talked in like a year or two or something like that. It'd been a while, which is a long time for Barb and I. Barb was literally at my wedding. I'm divorced now, so I'm like hesitating to say that. But still a cool event. It was very fun at Martha's Vineyard. It was so cool to see you there. The whole point of this story is I remember meeting you at some restaurant that you told me to go to at a mall. And it was like the night before the pitch.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, yeah, come meet me here. And I walk up to you and I like almost didn't recognize you. And B, when we started talking, you had just had this like, the only way I can explain it was like, it was Barb, but almost like Barb unleashed and like not really giving a shit, but like really bringing her best self into everything. And it was like, just like I think we literally had like seltzer waters. They were so pissed at us. Yeah. We had a no drinking night. But I just think it's like an amazing journey. And this actually is maybe a decent transition to a topic we wanted to talk about, which is Ozempic, which you're spending time advocating for. And you had listened to the last episode of this podcast and had some things to, some opinions about it that you texted me. And I don't know, like, where do you want to start? Like, first of all, like, what are you doing?
Yeah. So I'll give you a little of the backstory there too. So I am a beneficiary of these amazing miracle medication.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed in 2013 as type 2 diabetic. I'd actually done Navigenics when I was working at Highmark and knew that my risk was higher because of my genetic profile. My dad was a type 2 diabetic. I have other family members with it. I fought it. And since I've been 10 years old, it's been a problem. It just kept getting worse the older I got. It was managed, but it sucked. And my doctor got on me in 2018. These medications were approved by the FDA for kind of broad distribution. I kept saying, oh no, and then unfortunately what happened in 2021 was the Hollywood thing, right? Where it all got all the press, which is a whole other topic that we can go into.
Wait, so did nothing change from a regulation perspective between 2018 and 21? It just got more eyeballs on it?
Yeah, I got more eyeballs on it.
I actually didn't realize that. I thought there was something
they've actually been around for 10 years. They've been approved for 10 years. This is the thing, right? So I would back it up to say, and this is just kind of how I got into it. My doctor convinced me that I should try this. I tried another medication first. It did okay. It wasn't great. It didn't do a lot for weight loss. And in COVID, because I got off the road, pretty much quit drinking, because in my family history, it's like I run away from alcohol when things get tough.
You might be the only person that quit drinking during COVID.
I know, and I lost 20 pounds, right? Right? But
coincidence,
right? But what really happened was that our daughter got pregnant, and I became the trope of the grandma that like wants to get down on the floor and play with the kids. And I was at 207 pounds and 5'4", and I couldn't do it. There was no way that I could do it. And I didn't want to live like that. And so my doctor was like, it's time. You need to try this. And I was like, all right, but all the shame and all the stuff that gets fed to you over your life about it's you. You're just not good enough. You're not trying hard enough. You're not doing all the things you should be doing. Dude, I sign up for everything, right? I'm exposed to all this stuff. I sign up for everything and tried everything and tried things on my own too. Like I spent a lot of money of my own, private trainers, medically supervised weight loss programs that end up giving you gallbladder disease, and then you have to have your gallbladder emergency surgery. And so, like I have a lot of experience in that space. And what happened was that I started in September, and by March I had lost another, I don't even know, it was 20 some pounds, but it was enough to notice. And I went to conference board, and there were two experiences at conference board. One was all the people that I'd known forever who came up, and I felt sorry, honestly, for the guys, because they were like, I want to tell you that you look great, but I know I'm not supposed to do that. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Really. You can say it. But more often, it was in 75% of the conversations that I got into just because it was the topic of everyone was freaking out about in 2022. Understandably, by the way, from a cost perspective. Like, I get it. But the horrible stuff that people said, like literally people were like, well, why can't these diabetics just put down the fork? You know, everyone has 20 minutes a day. I was infuriated and incensed by what I heard. And so I called Greg Morrow when I was giving him my notes from the session. I was like, please do a track on this. You have to do a track on this next year. This is going to be my TED Talk. I've decided this is going to be, and I gave myself a year to do this. And he called me back 2 weeks later, I think, and said, so would you be willing to do that for our well-being conference? And I was like, without even thinking, yeah. When is it? 8 weeks. So I spent the next 6 weeks tearing through. My mom had died, I guess it's been 10 years. And so I had all the photos and all the things. And I spent the next 6 weeks going through an excruciating reliving of my life in pictures. And that is my talk. It's a photo album of me from the time that I was 10 and the first time that I felt publicly ashamed of my body because a teacher put me in front of a board and basically let the kids make fun of me.
Oh my God.
To being told I couldn't be promoted unless I lost weight. I would never make it in sales unless I lost weight, which makes you wonder where would I be economically from a career standpoint if I'd had this medication in my 30s instead of getting it when I was 60.
Oh, wow.
You know, we talk about mental health and all of the money that we invest in mental health. The thing that's so amazing about this for me, and granted, there are a lot of variations on this theme, right? There's an entire This is what people don't understand. There is an entire spectrum of medication that in fact are considered anti-obesity medications, which can be very effective for different people in different circumstances. But the Metabolic Institute at Cleveland Clinic talks about this in terms of being akin to treating cancer. It's multimodal, it's multifactorial. The treatment needs to be highly personalized in order to be effective. And it's not just about medication. I still have to do all the other things. But what's amazing about it is my brain is different. And that's the thing that's so hard to articulate. I quit drinking not because I did it on purpose, just because I don't want it. Right? Like I have no drive for that at all. And it doesn't bother me either. There are other things. For all my life, I twisted my hair. It's gone. I don't do it anymore. Craziest thing in the world.
Yeah. There's been a lot more reporting, I think, last year about how the impact of Ozempic on a bunch of these behaviors that are like compulsive, I guess. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah.
I mean, what does it feel like to have a different brain? Like, is there a contrast between old Barb and new Barb?
Oh, yeah. There's room for so much more now. I had a moment. I was probably about 7 weeks in. I was at my desk in my home office and it was like 7 o'clock at night because, you just keep going. Right. And I thought, oh my God, did I eat today? Like, I don't even know if I ate today. And it's the first time in my life that I had that experience of not being able to remember or have thought about food at all. And so when, there was a lot of buzz about food noise. So I talk about this in terms of for 50 years of my life, from my first waking thought to my last waking thought, some part of my brain was occupied with food, and that's gone.
I think people who don't have it might not even be able to
can't conceptualize
that.
Nope, can't. But it is striking in its absence.
Yeah.
And, when I saw you, that's part of what you see now. That unleashed part is, first of all, being willing to talk about this, because a lot of people, sadly, are still unable to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a daily thing. It's little things. Like, honestly, coming in a room like this and going, oh, I can get in that chair. It's the smallest stuff. And not having to be embarrassed because people are watching what go on my plate. I go and speak at these conferences and people will come up to me afterwards and they're like, oh, I see your, I'm like, really? That's so interesting to me. Why would you care what's on my plate? But they do. And because it's for your health, people feel like they're entitled to comment. It's the one part of our lives that is like this free for all of judgment. It's kind of the last bastion of, oh, it's okay to make fun about that. But I'm telling you, it's being unburdened by it. I tell a story about going shopping for our daughter's wedding for a dress for me. You have a little girl. For mine, I spent a lot of her life thinking about these moments that we would have. And this was one of them, right? That had been in my head forever. I ended up having to go to New York to get a dress because I went shopping in Minnesota and everything was like a tent. It was just frumpy. And, I'm not frumpy, right? but I couldn't find anything. And it was demoralizing. And I remember telling my girlfriend this, that it was one of the most demoralizing experiences of my life. Because you're in this room, you're stripped down. Okay, so did you ever indulge and say yes to the dress?
I have secondhand indulged.
All right.
Say yes to the dress.
So you know.
Evelyn clearly has. There's a lot of.
Right, it is, right? It's compelling. But there's these tiny women with big clips and elastic bands trying to make the sample size dress appear what it's going to be on your decidedly not sample sized body. And I have lived so many of those important moments in my life through shame instead of through the joy that should have been created. And in that moment, I realized like I was so consumed with my own humiliation that I couldn't give my daughter the experience that she should have had. And that was gutting to me. I can't get any of that back. But what I can do is this, right? I can talk about this. I can take it now. I can talk about this. I can talk about those things. And then I can look at employers and say, who in the room has invested in mental health or mental well-being for your populations in the last 12 months? Every hand in the room goes up. Mm-hmm. How about financial well-being? Do you know that it costs about 20% more to dress a large body? Because they charge you more because it's more fabric.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And by the way, now we have places that sell clothes, but you know, when you order swag for the company, what size do you go up to?
Well, okay. To 2XL.
Okay, but maybe 6 is really where you need to go. I do a lot of work with the corporate teams from Novo and Lilly on this, and Tracy Sims, who's like the head of corporate public relations or something for Lilly. He's a brilliant guy. Talks about look at whether or not the bathroom stall doors open in or out.
Oh.
Chairs. How big are the chairs? Are there chairs that people are comfortable in? And when you think about, and I hear this ROI conversation go on, right? And it's like, oh, but the ROI, that's when I really have to like put myself in the box and control myself. Cause I'm like, okay, so I can tell you, and by the way, when every Saturday, when we go to pick up our 2-year-old granddaughter and go do something with her, like I'm on the floor, I'm rolling around, I'm chasing her. I carried her through the entire Minnesota Zoo last weekend. You know, I am doing all the things I could never have done before. And I could start seeing my productivity change in a matter of months. My head was more clear. I felt better about myself. My mental well-being was improved. It's meaningful. And it's meaningful on so many different fronts. And we tend to think about it in this one very narrow dimension. And by the way, I just got my latest blood work back and all of my biometrics are stellar. The diabetes is still there, but it's controlled. It's well controlled. I could go take a blood test now and an insurer would not know that I had diabetes, which is how I found out that I had it because I applied for life insurance and they came back and were like, nope. So that's become a real passion for me to encourage people to think about obesity more broadly. It's not just about weight loss. And gold standard of care matters. I get very upset when I see some of what's going on in the market today. And then I see these stories, the thing you sent me.
Yeah.
Right? I have questions for her. I'm sad for her.
So the thing that I sent Barb was a clip of an artist that had said on an Instagram story that she had a pretty serious side effect from
osteoporosis and osteopenia, which... I mean, I feel like she came right out of that appointment and may also have been, I don't know if you've ever had a serious health condition like diagnosis. It's real hard to absorb.
Not like that. Yeah.
It's real hard to absorb what you're being told in the moment and then to kind of try and regurgitate it. There's something wrong there. There is something wrong with that whole scenario there. And this is my fear. And this is why I go out and I talk about this because primary care physicians will tell you that they're not well trained in this. In fact, it's not even taught in medical school. Obesity has not been taught in medical school. They don't know how to talk about it. They don't really know how to treat it and they don't have time.
Well, I think you're kind of like hitting on the point that the last episode, Kate and I talked about Ozempic. We talked to clients about it, not actually because it comes up for employee communications all that much. It doesn't. Because I've just started to be curious, like how are they handling the claims cost? How are they thinking about prior authorizations, things like that? It's a tough one, right? Because
it's really hard.
I hear your story and I'm like, I know you really well and I've known you for a long time. Clearly an incredible outcome. And clearly you're very passionate about it and want others to have that opportunity and to even rethink how we think about obesity and treating it is, I think, really important. When I look at Ozempic, I'm like also thinking about processed foods. I think we might have told the story in the last podcast. I can't remember, but like I'd mentioned that we went on site to one of our clients and they have a plant
Oh, yeah.
in Tucson. I love these opportunities to go on site to our customers because like I don't think most people understand who are like privileged like we are to live in cities and have access to things, really understand what's going on in a lot of the country. We had to be on site at like maybe 5 or 6 a.m. The only places that were open at that hour, it's basically McDonald's, right? That's where you have to get breakfast. Like we were trying to get healthy food. It's not like we weren't motivated. We've got the Ozempic piece, which is like the treatment of something that, you know, oftentimes gets to a state of being almost like acute, maybe like a boiling lobster type of vibe to get to that acute stage. But clearly what you're describing is like, if that's not an acute context, I almost don't know what is. And at the same time, I'm worried about people taking Ozempic for too long or like what it might cause, or that it gives us an excuse to like Elon Musk is a good example.
Okay.
Elon Musk is a good example because Elon would agree with you. This might be something you and Elon really vibe out about.
Okay, let's test that.
Elon is very pro Ozempic. Elon's like, let's give it to everybody.
See, because, I don't agree with that.
Okay, I shouldn't say everybody. His thing is like, give it to as many people as you can because the net reduction in healthcare costs, the increase in productivity is worth it. And he's like, you know, very much engineering mindset, very much like, I wouldn't call him the bastion of like well-being. I think the whole trend in Silicon Valley to get healthy and wear a ring might have skipped Elon, might have skipped a generation there. But he would agree with you. And I think this sort of comes from, we're kind of seeing this in California, where in California for a long time, it looked like the environmentalists, the ones that like wanted to save the trees, save the animals, the ones that were fighting for humans to have access to a better environment, to a better future. And the wildfires in California suddenly made a lot of people realize that like, no. Actually, we have to like engineer our way out of this thing that we've let happen here. We have to do proactive burns. We have to take down stuff. It's very much like not actually about protecting the environment. It's actually about like protecting humans by manipulating the environment. In California, there's a huge swing against the environmentalist mindset because it's actually hurting a lot of like what is actually here. The reason I say that is like, to me, the Ozempic lets us engineer our way out of obesity without altering some of the factors that drive it. That's my thesis that I want to submit to you, because we don't have to solve processed foods. We can just fight them through Ozempic. There's a framing that says that like, if you look at the stock price of the food companies that do processed foods and you match it up against the companies that do Ozempic's winning.
Oh yeah.
That's actually the fight. They're shrinking their package sizes. They're doing the Ozempic friendly meals. Like we might actually get to skip the whole part where we solve our food chain.
Yeah, I don't think so though. So a couple of things. The first thing that I would say is that my perspective is treatment for everyone who needs it. And that means by appropriate care, trained and educated prescribing, which means not a GLP-1 necessarily for everyone. And I avoid the specific names because they have very specific applications, right? Ozempic versus Wegovy versus Mounjaro versus Zepbound. And now there's Kagrasima and there's 400 other molecules in the pipeline. But that care also comes with, I have an RD. I mean, this is one of the things that's made me successful is that I found a team that has a certified, obesity medicine doc who works with me still to this day on how are things going? How are you feeling? What about this? What about that? Like, is this okay? Is that okay? It's not just about biometrics. It's about my entire life. And so stress figures into that. And what are you eating? And I have this amazing RD who I was like, I can't eat raw vegetables. It makes me really sick now because my digestion has slowed to the point you put a head of lettuce on the table and let it sit there for a week. It ain't pretty. Right. So I can't eat like a meal salad like I used to because it causes me distress, which then think about it, kills my productivity, kills my ability, right? Like all of that. So she's like, all right, well, let's figure it out. I got off the road in December after a long run. She worked with me beforehand, but okay, well, how are you going to deal with being on the road? And to the same thing that you find. The problem for me now is I can't eat that stuff. I get unwell. I feel unwell with the processed foods. Yeah. Even in a place like New York. And especially now.
Oh my God, New
right?
York's a disaster.
It's so hard to find something that's not breaded and fried and sauced and whatever, right?
The bodegas.
Oh, delicious, but and you have to still eat enough that you're getting nutrition.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the balance. So I have a phenomenal RD who works with me on that. The other thing is one thing at a time, right? Like we tackled the food first and food in the season. So when I'm traveling is a season, when I'm home is a season, like what winter vegetables are available right now that I can get my hands on that I can do and what can I do with them? She sends me recipes, she does all this stuff. But then I was like, okay, I need activity too. She's like, well, what do you like to do? I'm like, nothing. Like I play an instrument. I love to walk, but it's Minnesota. It's 30 below. I don't love walking in Minnesota. So she's like, what will you do? Different question. I used to love to dance. The whole Zumba thing was a thing. And, God, back in the 80s, what was it? Jazzercise. She went out and found community ed classes for me and sent me the links to them.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. But that's what I mean when I talk about holistic care for obesity. It is deeper than 15 minutes in the doctor's office and here, take a drug. That's not going to be the answer. So to your point, can we engineer our way around this for a while? I think we can. And I think that the other argument is, why the hell are you going to let people get sick before you treat them? We don't do that with anything else.
I mean, I think the whole American healthcare system is based on that premise.
It's sick care. It absolutely is.
I mean, we do that with everything else.
Well, right. But then the deprescribing thing, we don't say, oh, your hypertension's gone, so we're going to take you off your hypertensive medication. Awesome. That's what the study that came out today. It's out of True. I don't remember who it was.
Just closed my laptop, but I can open it back up.
I know, it's on my phone. But, they're starting to look at, because deprescribing is a big question, but there's no evidence to support deprescribing as a long-term strategy. Instead, my thesis is what we're going to find is the studies that have been done so far have taken people to maximum dose. That's also where you start seeing a lot of the serious side effects, those kinds of things. I think what we're going to find is that people can take lower doses and have good results. And oh, by the way, other medications too that have thus far not been widely prescribed. Metformin. Metformin is a $4 drug. Metformin actually can be really quite effective in helping people control their weight. But because it's only been cleared for diabetes, it would be millions and millions and millions of dollars to take it back through and get it approved for weight loss. They're not going to do that for a $4 drug. So doctors prescribe off-label. And then employers hear off-label and go, oh, no, we're not doing that. But you could have a $4 drug instead of a $1,000 drug, and it might just be as effective.
So what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I hear you saying is you see that just like any new technology, there's a bunch of calibration happening right now. And it's happening within the context of a bunch of treatment tools. And one of those tools is GLP-1s. And even there, the dosage, do you take someone off? Do you keep them on? What other things do you combine it with? Are kind of open questions that are still being investigated. And I think what I'm saying is people are abusing the shit out of it at the same time. And tech companies are popping up to subscribe these things with a Zoom call with no additional intervention. And I think that's what I'm probably reacting to is I'm seeing that and I'm like, well, that's going to end not well.
For any of us.
Right. And it's really interesting to hear that you get sick off of processed foods. That's kind of new information. I mean, I'm sure it doesn't happen to everyone, but 2018, we're still kind of early in this.
I mean, yes.
Yes and no.
In the broad application.
Application, yeah.
It's in the wild now, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a startup guy, so.
You're the science guy. You're always the experimenter.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I think when I say I'm the startup guy, what I mean is because I'm in the industry, I get really, really annoyed at companies that do stupid shit. Right now, the number of telemedicine subscription, that whole thing. And I want to kind of loop back to something that you said that I think is really interesting. You kind of you said it and I was I kind of got stuck on it and I've been wanting to come back. Because you said anyone that needs it, anyone that needs treatment should be able to get it.
Access it.
And I think that's kind of the question is where do we draw the line for who needs it versus who doesn't need it?
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on that yet?
I do. I think they're emerging gold standard of care. Some of that is, again, weighed against the benefit. As a patient with diabetes, it took my persistent 7.0 A1C down to 5.6.
In your case, it's such a home run
Right. That's why I always start my thing by saying I am one of the fortunate beneficiaries. Like I don't win. I don't gamble much because I don't win. I won this one. I won the big round on this one.
And in every way, you have a great doctor, had great results for you.
Right. So this is gold standard of care.
This is gold standard of care.
Right? Which means, again, an understanding of someone who has an understanding of the entire suite of tools capable.
Yeah.
And also has enough interest and curiosity to say, what is available to you at work, right? Like, I don't want to disabuse employers from offering the things that they've always offered, but I challenge them to say, okay, out of the last 5 times you had to go beg for money for your well-being program, how many decks do you have? I defy you to pull them out and show me. There isn't a single page in there that says, if they just lost weight, we'd save money.
I think I've created at least 5,000 of those decks when I was a consultant. Copy paste.
For some people, it's not enough. For some people, it is. It's great, right?
Let's go back to the question though, like, where do we draw the line? Because
I think
like you're really obvious, right? That's a home run.
So there's some interesting parallels here, and we're starting to see phenome typing in this. There are a couple of companies that are working on similar to, and I still think it's early on this side too, but similar to what they've discovered around particularly mental health medications and people's ability to metabolize them and effectively use the molecules in different medications, right? Like this one might be right for you, that one not so much. We're starting to see some of that work being done around GLP-1s. Okay. But there's a history component, right? One of the privileges of getting out and telling this story is that people come to me afterwards and tell me their stories. And it is heartbreaking, and it is also really invigorating to me because I hear progress. But when you look at someone that has struggled with this from childhood, that's a mark. Post-baby is different. Menopause is different. Post-accident, if you're on, there are medications that will make you gain weight. Understanding those nuances becomes really important to what the ultimate care path is. Yeah. And so I am not in favor of just give everybody the pen and let them shoot themselves up. I don't think that's right. Because here's the other thing that happens. I have a dear friend who has struggled with her weight for many years, has other health issues. She, together with an endocrinologist and her primary care physician, decided, yep, a GLP-1 formulation was the right one for you. And it was one of the brand ones, but for weight loss, not for diabetes. She kept having pretty severe symptoms and kept calling her and would call me. And I'm like, you need to call your doctor. You need to call the doctor. You need to call, because these are things that you need to pay attention to. So someone on the other end needs to understand how to interpret what's going on. And again, are we still new enough? Yeah, but the medication's been around for actually quite a long time. It's pretty well documented. And she eventually ended up, I think it was not even 10 days after she'd physically seen her endocrinologist, complaining of symptoms, collapsed on the bathroom floor, barely had enough time to call 911. They broke into her house, took her to the hospital, and she had a tennis ball sized compaction in her colon. She very narrowly escaped having to have her colon resected. For 5 days in ICU and 5 days in a gen med bed, it was $439,000. And who paid for that? Her employer. So it's really important that we get it right, or more right. Than is kind of what's happening right now. Yeah, I have real heartburn with that. And so the question becomes, how do you make sure that people have access to educated and trained prescribing? And there's a couple of companies out there that are actually working on doing that and training more physicians, which we need. And I think by and large, many physicians want that, right? Like they don't want to mistreat people. They just have never had the training. And they don't know what to look or listen for. Yeah. So this is where telemedicine can really be an augmentation of that care, because they don't have to be the front lines. They just have to know somebody who does. And AI can be helpful. This is a place where, the diagnostic properties potentially of that, tempered by, common sense, educated review. Yeah. Right. Can help winnow that down. Yeah. As the market continues to develop new formulations, and now they're talking about, well, this one, by the way, really seems to do something for gambling, and this one really seems to do something for alcoholism, and this one really seems, but we're talking about, there's a couple of podcasts that I will encourage you, if you got 6 hours, there's a couple of them that are really fabulous, but one is by the scientists that actually ran the program at Novo for 10 years, 18 years, to continue to push for getting this approved. The zeitgeist story is, it was an accident. They didn't know it was going to cause all this weight loss. She was like, bullshit. We did too. We always knew that, but we knew the market didn't want to buy it because there's such stigma. So the first thing is getting people over the idea that it's the easy button, because it's not an easy process.
Yeah. I mean,
Right?
I think if there's one thing I'm taking away from our time here together today is it doesn't actually sound like an easy process.
It is. You have to be committed to it.
Or to like do it properly where you're not really putting yourself at
Risk.
Unmitigated risk.
Yeah. And my fear is that particularly people who are getting it through some of these lighter prescribing pathways are putting themselves at risk. And to your point, it's not going to end well for anybody because the bad stories are going to come out. People are going to get hurt, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I will also, just because we're sitting in la la land, I come to the defense of some of the women in the industry in particular. I guess women and men too have been called out for using it. Stop that. There is a very large manufacturer that offers this medication. And one of the reasons that they do is that they did a deep dive on their safety stuff. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we got people climbing up and down ladders that are only supposed to hold 250 pounds that are 300 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's a problem.
Yeah.
We're asking people to jump in and out of trucks. We're asking them to do these other things, physical things. And if they were 10% less of their weight, our safety numbers might actually really be impacted, right?
Yeah.
In some way, I also see that, particularly, I will say, for the women in the film industry who are held to a standard. I don't want to have to abide by that standard. And that's how they make their living. I tend to push back on people that are like, me, Hollywood. Like, I'll say it, I'm not a Kardashian fan. But you know what? You can't blame a girl for trying to earn a living. It's a tool. My fear is it becomes literally the Hunger Games, right? Who can afford it? Who can't?
Yeah, which actually kind of goes back to your career journey and how you spoke about your weight within the context of the career journey. And you said something like, hey, I wonder if I had it 30 years ago, where would I be now? Because I was told I was too heavy to.
Fat was the word that they used, but yeah.
Fat for sales.
In a performance review, by the way.
So freaking wild. For sure, we're heading in a place in society where if you are higher income, you're going to be skinnier. You probably already are. Mm-hmm. You have access to these drugs through a number of means, some of which I swear about, and some of which are appropriate pathways of care. And I think part of a very compelling piece of your argument here is that if you don't fit into that category, aka elites or quasi-elites, essentially, then you're not going to get access to these drugs unless your employer, which I think covers roughly 164 million Americans, are covered by private health insurance, disproportionately folks that are working, obviously.
Yep.
In obviously jobs that are not going to be paying at the executive levels. If you're not getting access through your employer, you're inherently disadvantaged in your place in society, your safety, a number of other factors that you brought up.
Longevity, probably.
Longevity, health span.
Quality of life. Not
being able to play with their grandkids, where a rich person can go and get the injections and have the right care, and a poor person can't bend over to play with their kids. That's probably the best argument I've heard, combined with, hey, like, we really need to keep in mind that there's going to be bad actors for providers and there's going to be good actors, and don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, in this case, the Instagram video.
Mm-hmm. My heart went out to her, though. Like, she is in real trauma right now and has a real thing, but that was only a part of the story. Yeah. Was my sense. Yeah. I guess.
And I think it's fair. She actually hasn't said anything since that I know of. And she deleted or let that Instagram video kind of like, it was a story. Like, it wasn't posted as, I went and looked up her account and I was like, wow, it's really crazy that like Business Insider or whoever it was screen grabbed this and wrote the story about Ozempic. That's crazy.
It's something else to talk about. But to your point, too, it does not absolve us of trying to address the food issues.
And that kind of was like not a bad transition to the RFK confirmation. And I think he cleared committee today.
He did.
It's looking like he's going to get confirmed. Something I really like about him is that he is the only presidential candidate that actually talked about food. Mm-hmm. And make America healthy again sounds pretty good. It's a great slogan. Apparently not. Apparently not. It didn't get him first. It didn't get him number one. But.
Can we just have that and like the not nuts part?
No, because a parasite ate a piece of his brain. Isn't that crazy?
Was it in the lettuce? That's what I want to know. Thing. Like, I know. It's problematic in so many ways.
Yeah. It's problematic. There's a few problematic things.
Well,
he also hogs weight lifting equipment.
Oh.
You want to hold that against him.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He'll like a Gold's Gym in Venice.
Oh, really?
He'll like
he
take like 3 or 4 machines and sort of like nod it. Yeah. A nice guy besides that.
No, not who I want. I mean, you know what? Fine, send him off to do that. But like, there's just so much other that is problematic there.
You mean from like the perspective of him as a human being, the things that he's done in his life and messed up on? Or you mean his general policies that could kill millions of people in terms of vaccines? The second thing.
The second thing.
Okay.
I have a fair amount of disregard, frankly, for anybody that ends up at that level of public service.
Disregard, like,
because I think to get there, you just have to be some level of human, have unappealing qualities as a human in order to, and a value system that is not consistent with mine, I'll say.
That's fair. I mean, that's the track record. I actually don't think that's a controversial statement. There's a different personality types, and there is a piece of a personality type that loves to accrue power that is like documented. It's just a thing. If you look around you, it's pretty obvious. That comes correlated with other traits. Too shocking when we look around and see like that almost every person in power has done some bad stuff at some point. It obviously heavily correlates.
I think so, unfortunately.
Okay, so you're kind of saying, let's ignore the part for a minute where, oh my God, my brain's so jumbled now from all the bad things that all the bad things that I've heard about various people. I'm like, is this the defense secretary now, or is this the?
God. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, but I think generally, the American public, Kate and I talked about this in the last episode, and I really do believe it. I think the American public has sent these people in to sort of like shake up the government. They're certainly doing it. From the RFK perspective, he's going to probably be confirmed.
I know.
Right? By the time this podcast comes out, he's going to be confirmed. Earlier, before this conversation, we're talking about some of the rooms that you found yourself in.
Yeah. What
are the employer vibes out there, industry executive vibes out there right now, in your opinion, with the incoming leadership?
I haven't been in any of those rooms in the last week. So that could have changed in the last week. But particularly with respect to this, I think that there is this recognition that there are some valid thoughts about what might be beneficial to focus on, right? Food quality, purity, changing the dynamic. And, the whole question of food deserts and like, it's a real problem. I hear, all the health plans are SDOH this, SDOH this. Well, I'm starting to see solutions emerge that are really trying to focus on fixing that by, if you can't put it there locally, how do you get it there locally? Well, you start shipping food to people. Sure. Is that a worthwhile investment? I mean, you look at the stuff that we spend money on.
Yeah.
In benefits broadly that, and I think this is where the point solution glut has really hurt us because so much money has gone into that and so little has been able to be demonstrated in terms of value.
Yeah.
Right.
That's fair.
Broadly. And let's face it, we haven't had the data to prove it either. We're really starting to get into that, our ability to use data now to understand these things in a way that we haven't historically.
Yeah.
So this confluence of data management, and opportunities, I'm hopeful is going to drive some different thinking about how do we be more effective with this stuff. But I think employers largely they're exhausted from buying stuff. They don't want to buy stuff anymore. And now we have the fiduciary liability lawsuits, which everyone's freaking out about payment integrity. And now we have to do this stuff and then look in their health plans. And like in 1987, when I started, waste, fraud, and abuse was a thing that companies used to do. And then we developed claim edits. Well, the claim edits, hospital systems got smarter about coding and then the claim, and it got into this like cycle of upcoding and catching them and stuff. And now it's a whole different question with machine readable files. And what do you do with that stuff? And who's really using it? Right? What's the benefit to an employer to do that? And an employer's like, I have a day job, right? By the way, this is one of my largest line items on our expense as a business. So I have to figure out how to do this better. That's what I think employers are really focused on. And they're starting to look at some of this stuff too and saying, okay, if everybody wants me to pay for GLP-1s, is it okay to ask someone to be in a program alongside that? My answer would be, yeah, absolutely it is. Because gold standard of care says you have to do both. You can't just do one or the other. it won't work for the long term, right? So that's okay. So how are we addressing food when you're on site? Like if the only place to go get stuff at 6 a.m. is McDonald's, is there a cafeteria? Is it subsidized? We're back to like, and now that people are going back to work, what do the facilities look like? What are we doing to promote people moving through the space, right? And actually getting up to go get water a bunch of times in a day or whatever it happens to be. So I think it's, we're back to kind of looking at those kinds of behaviors again in very kind of minute tactical ways in a lot of spaces and getting rid of stuff that's like, it was fine. Any of these programs for the most part work for the people that use them.
Yeah.
Right. But you're in the business of getting people to be aware and to use them. Right.
Yeah.
What do you see?
What do I see? First of all, I think it's a really fascinating point cyclically, right? Because you're spot on. It's like, of course, we went full remote, not manufacturers, but a lot of other people went full remote, and that drove even like corporate offices going remote, drove a lot of these programs being adopted that are generally technologies. I think it's saturated to the point where like you can't tell what's up or down. They're all VC backed. So they have insane pressure to grow. They basically poured a ton of money into customer acquisition, getting enterprises to sign up. They got enterprises to sign up. Now they realize that they can't fund customer acquisition the same way in this market because they can't get cheap dollars anymore. So they're trying to grow horizontally in the accounts. So now they're adding services and offerings, but employer might have gotten that benefit for like reason A, and suddenly they have A plus B plus C, and that B and C overlaps with some other vendors that they've brought in. I mean, I was just at a vendor summit. This is the first time this employer has ever done a vendor summit. I've been to a bunch of these now, where literally you just get all the vendors into a room and essentially, I don't want to say they fight it out, because I think they're really actually wonderfully collaborative and they want to figure out pathways for employees to travel. But I think when they leave the room, we sort of default to fighting for territory. And so I think employers are working on figuring out, how do we like slim down where possible? How do we define pathways and referrals between vendors, which is such a freaking mess. And we're working on something for that. But like, because we're working on it, I can see it's a freaking mess. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of like taking a step up and belt tightening. And then like for us, I mean, what we do is like, we are looking at the top, like generally when we start working with an employer, we're like, hey, what are your top like 5 things that you really care about that you need to move the needle on? And please don't tell me it's pet insurance. Like, that's not going to be part of our conversation. You have to like shift the mindset from being equitable across, as if like every vendor should get the same amount of airtime. And it's like, no, actually they shouldn't. There's certain things that are really big cost drivers and certain things that we frankly don't care about. And we probably need to like say the thing that matters a lot 20 times so people actually go do it. And that's going to come at the expense of some things that just aren't viewed as important for cost drivers or for improving like standards of care. So that's what I'm saying. But
boy, clip that and then just send me that on a loop. Because like that's the conversation that honestly you're very good at saying things succinctly.
Oh, thanks.
And that was a really good, succinct way to sum up kind of what I wish a lot of employers could say in these meetings. But on the other side, they have people that like something matters to everybody. You know, the question that comes back to, it always comes back to money. There's one solution in the market that I have heard repeatedly employers say, I cannot prove an ROI with this. I know I'm never going to prove an ROI with this, but this is the thing that when I put this person in a room with other employees, they will always tell the story about how this dramatically affected them.
What is it?
It's a caregiving solution. It's a caregiver support solution.
Really? They can't show an ROI from saved hours in the day?
No, because the tracking systems are so bad for that. And PTO has washed all of that out,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah. They need a consultant to come in and build a model. Hi, I could do it for it. Just kidding.
Oh my God, too funny. You're not getting into that business on the side, are you? No. God, see, no. I won't even do that.
No, I'm not touching that one. But I was laughing about, I thought you were going to say something else, which is this whole like they're actually oftentimes today, because there's so many vendors, they're so competitive with each other, not even like direct A to A solutions, but like this might be A, this is B. They do different things, but they're like competing for airtime and attention.
Yeah.
And
so dollars.
And dollars. But they'll make their stuff available on they all say they want to do it on a per eligible basis. But in reality, oftentimes they're being priced on a per participant basis.
Oh, yeah.
So that there's not a dollar's commitment up front, right? I was on a call with a very, 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 very large technology company. Kate and I were like laughing about this afterwards because sometimes I like get a little too crabby and a little too like forward on calls, and like I like I'm like way more so than I should be, but I just like kind of say what I think. They were like, hey, what we really need to do is to proactively push what an employee needs in their benefit package so that they only see the stuff that they need. But what we don't want to do is seem creepy, and we don't really want to give the data that would predict the things that the person wants, because then there's all these like privacy issues because we're doing proactive outbound education to trigger them to understand that they have. So it's like my least favorite conversation is one where someone asks a lot of questions. So it's like, how do we do this? And how do we do that? And how do we, the person in the room's asking the questions and everyone's listening. And we're like, we're here to figure out if there's a way to do this or not to ask how there is a way to do this. And there is actually no way to do this. Because you've described a series of variables that can't possibly coexist if we can't have the data and can't proactively communicate with someone about what they need because it looks creepy. Therefore, you can't do that part of the equation. To me, that's like so, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because it stops companies from actually doing the stuff that they can do, which is just proactively communicate about the most important things that can impact the maximum number of people and make pathways available. That's like where our AI tool comes in. If someone has a need, they usually know that they have that need and they just need to be trained to know where to go to ask for help.
Yep.
The problem comes when people don't know that there's a place to go where they can ask for help.
Yep. That's why I'm so excited about what you're doing, because I agree with you. So in our work, we are often embedded, right? Because our function is to act as an extension of our clients' teams, right? Like we become part of them for a brief period of time. And so you see all the pain. HR ops teams are just struggling. How do you train somebody to answer all this stuff correctly? And by the way, I know everybody goes online. They all want to do. No, you know what? When stuff gets real, they pick up the phone and they're like, Pam, what is the answer? Because I can't find the answer. So help me, Pam. And Pam, poor Pam has been there a week. She doesn't know.
Yeah.
You know, she's just trying to not have you be mad at me. Right. Giving them a place, even if what you're doing is you're giving that to the Ben Ops people, it doesn't have to be facing.
Yeah.
Right. But giving somebody that, I had this conversation with one of my clients about surgery, high quality surgery solution that they are putting in place. And same thing. It's like, well, you know, we don't want to outreach to them because if we do, there's somebody's going to get upset. And I'm like, somewhere along the line, like I'm actually okay. It's kind of the GLP-1 thing, right? Like I'm okay with saying, look, this is, and I don't want to hear that it's an expensive medication because gene cell therapy is really expensive. And I defy you to show me the ROI on that for one person. And so you can't apply the same argument. Like, don't talk to me about it because ROI on this is cost is on a grand scale. ROI is on a grand scale.
Definitely. Yeah.
But I think it's entirely appropriate to say to somebody, look, we see that this could be potentially fantastic medication, right? But the reality of that is that there's a cost associated with it. And in order for it to work properly, these things have to come along with it. Now, we've got all these resources here that you can take advantage of in any way, shape, or form that you desire to, but we're going to hook you up so that you do use that stuff. And we're going to ask that you use that stuff in order to continue to receive coverage for this thing. I'm fine with that. As long as this stuff does what it's supposed to do, then fine. But when it's half lit, half brought to the table, not really very smart, and it's one answer for everybody, and the answer is, oh, you don't really need that other stuff. Yeah. Like that's problematic.
Yeah.
But the idea that you can't reach out to someone and say, hey, at the last time that we did a health assessment, you were like, 32, 34 BMI. We've got some stuff. Would you like to do that?
Yeah. Well, Barb, we've officially recorded the longest Airbo podcast.
I was going to get edited down, aren't we?
Well, I don't know. It's like good stuff. But we actually have dinner reservation in 9 minutes.
Oh, okay.
At Jelena.
Oh, we got to go.
It's like really nice. Have you been there?
I have not.
It's like an OG in the LA dining scene.
I love it.
Yeah. It's in Venice. It's on Abbot-Kinney. It's close to the hotel.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. We'll ride over together.
I love that. Well, I have my car here. So
okay.
Well, do you want me to drive you?
No, I've got my car too.
Okay.
Which is very LA of us. We both have our cars. Barb, thank you for joining us today.
Vlad, thank you.
Listeners, thank you for listening. Evelyn, thank you for audioing and doing everything that you do afterwards. We've gotten many compliments on your audio skills after the last podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, she's glowing.
I hope this is entertaining and has, a couple nuggets in there.
Yeah.
For your audience. And thank you for being patient and listening to us spin wheels, because this has been so fun.
Yeah, likewise. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Barb.